Dolly Parton has never been one to hide behind gossip. She's faced every rumor with grace and laughter, but this time, something felt different. In late 2025, after months of canceled appearances and online concern, the country icon decided it was time to speak up. Her fans expected reassurance. What they got instead was a revelation that shocked even her closest followers. For years, Dolly had been living what she called a double life, a deeply personal reality that she'd guarded from the public eye. And now, after 3 long decades of silence, she was finally ready to tell the truth. The little girl who dared to dream bigger. Dolly Parton's story begins way back in 1946, in a tiny rural spot in Tennessee called Locust Ridge. Her parents were barely out of childhood themselves. Her father was just 15 and her mother only 17 when they got married, and they didn't stop at starting a family early. They went on to have 12 children in total. That meant Dolly grew up surrounded by 11 brothers and sisters, all packed into one small home in the Smoky Mountains. It was a life defined by love, laughter, and a whole lot of hardship. In an interview with journalist Larry Grobel, Dolly once opened up about how poor her family really was. Staying clean was a challenge. Bathing happened just once a week, as she put it, whether we needed it or not. Yet, despite those struggles, Dolly always spoke about her childhood with deep affection. In an essay for Guideposts, she explained that while life in the Smokies was far from easy, it taught her family how to make the most of what they had. Resourcefulness wasn't just a skill, it was survival. Every single day was about trying to make things a little bit better. And that, she said, was where her determination, and eventually her magic, was born. The cold winters in Tennessee were another story altogether. Even though the South isn't known for brutal winters, poverty made things far tougher. In that same Guideposts essay, Dolly recalled the day she was born. It was so cold in their one-room cabin that when her mother mopped the kitchen floor, the water froze into a thin layer of ice. That kind of cold seeped into everything. In one conversation, she even joked about how, as a child, when one of her siblings wet the bed, she didn't exactly mind. It was the only source of warmth on freezing nights. It might sound wild, but for Dolly and her siblings, that was just reality. They slept in layers, huddled together, because inside the cabin was often just as cold as the world outside. Growing up in that big family, Dolly learned early that the best way to stand out was to use her voice, literally. The moment she started singing and picking at her guitar, her mother noticed something special. Whenever visitors came by, her mom would proudly call out for Dolly to sing one of her songs. Music quickly became her way of shining in a crowded, noisy household. Through all the struggles, her parents never failed to show their children love and devotion. That warmth, mixed with hardship, later became the heart of Dolly's music. She often said that everything she went through in that little mountain home helped shape her songs, her strength, and her unstoppable drive. From the moment she could carry a tune, Dolly knew she was destined for more. She may have started in a humble cabin in Tennessee, but deep down, she always believed her voice was meant to echo far beyond those mountains. At just 5 years old, Dolly Parton was already showing signs of the superstar she would become. While most kids her age were still learning their ABCs, Dolly was writing her very first song, right on her family's front porch. Her microphone was nothing more than a tin can, and her audience consisted of chickens, goats, and the occasional family pet. From the very beginning, her music came straight from the heart and from the humble dirt of her Tennessee home. By the time she turned 6, she was already singing in the church choir, finding her voice in front of the congregation every Sunday. But Dolly's childhood wasn't all sunshine and song. It was full of wild stories that could easily fill an entire movie. One of the most shocking came when she was about 6 or 7 years old. In an interview years later, she shared that she once jumped over a fence and landed directly on a broken mason jar, slicing 3 of the little toes on her right foot nearly clean off. There was no hospital nearby, no doctor to call. So, her mother did what she had to do. She sewed Dolly's toes back on herself. The only thing they used to numb the pain was kerosene. Against all odds, Dolly recovered completely, later laughing about how those same toes healed just fine. It was one of those moments that showed just how tough and resilient she was. Even as a child, when Dolly was around 8 years old, her uncle Bill Owens gave her a gift that changed everything: a guitar. That simple gesture lit a fire in her. Bill became her mentor, taking her on trips to Nashville to see other performers at the Grand Ole Opry. Those early visits gave Dolly a front-row education in country music and showed her exactly where she wanted to be. By the age of 10, she was already auditioning for talent shows, leaving every room she sang in buzzing with excitement. That confidence soon led to her being invited to perform on The Cass Walker Show, where she earned $5 per appearance, a small fortune to a young girl from Locust Ridge. By 12, Dolly was ready to take the next big step, recording her first single, Puppy Love. But getting to the studio in Louisiana wasn't easy. With no car and very little money, Dolly and her grandmother bought bus tickets for the long journey south. They got lost at their first stop, stranded in an unfamiliar town overnight. Dolly later recalled how her grandmother wept in the bus station, terrified and exhausted, while she tried her best to comfort her. Eventually, after several days of travel, they made it to the studio, and Dolly recorded her first song, marking the true beginning of her professional career. Just a year later, at 13, Dolly achieved a dream that most country artists spend their whole lives chasing. She performed at the Grand Ole Opry. That night, she met her idol, Johnny Cash, who introduced her to the audience himself. Dolly opened with a George Jones cover, but when the crowd demanded more, she delivered 3 encores, including one of her own songs. The audience couldn't get enough. For a small-town girl barely in her teens, it was a defining moment, her arrival on the country music stage. Dolly would later admit that seeing Johnny Cash perform for the first time had a profound effect on her. She described being completely mesmerized by his presence on stage, saying he was the first person who ever made her understand what true charisma and even sex appeal looked like. Though there was never a romantic relationship between them, Cash became both an inspiration and a friend. Those early encounters with him, the bright lights of the Opry, and the roar of the crowd all helped shape Dolly Parton into the unstoppable force she was destined to become. The private romance that outlasted fame. It might not sound like the start of a great love story, but Dolly Parton met the love of her life, Carl Dean, in one of the most ordinary places imaginable: a laundromat. It was her very first day in Nashville. She had just graduated high school the night before, left 2 boyfriends behind in Tennessee, and wasn't even thinking about romance. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. Carl spotted her first, and according to him, it was love at first sight. The moment he saw her, he knew she was the woman he would marry. Dolly, still new to the city and just trying to get her laundry done, felt a spark too. She invited him to visit her at her aunt and uncle's house, where she was staying, and Carl showed up every single day for a week. Later, Dolly shared that she had rushed to Nashville with barely a moment to spare, even bringing along a pile of dirty clothes. She was just getting to know her new neighborhood when Carl called out to her from his pickup truck. Being the friendly country girl she was, she waved back, and that was it. A simple hello turned into a lifelong love story. At first, Dolly was cautious. Growing up, she'd been taught not to go off alone with someone she didn't know. So, instead of going on a date, she invited Carl to visit her at her family's home while she babysat her nephew. Carl agreed, and from that moment on, he was a fixture in her life. Their connection grew fast, and on their first real date, Carl even introduced her to his parents. A bold move, but Dolly didn't seem the least bit fazed. By 1966, Dolly's career was just beginning to take off, and her manager, Fred Foster, wasn't thrilled about her plans to marry. He warned her that getting hitched could make promoting her career more difficult. But Dolly, being as headstrong as she was talented, didn't let that stop her. On May 30th, 1966, she and Carl quietly tied the knot in a tiny church outside Nashville, with only her mother, the pastor, and the pastor's wife as witnesses. It was a simple ceremony that set the tone for the rest of their private, low-key marriage. Soon after their wedding, Dolly released her debut album, Hello, I'm Dolly, which launched her into country music stardom. Through all the fame that followed, Carl stayed firmly in the background. He avoided the spotlight completely, only appearing publicly with Dolly once at a BMI dinner in 1966, celebrating her early success. He was her steady, silent supporter, happy to let his wife shine. Around this same time, Dolly's career took another big leap. She began working with country star Porter Wagoner, who was hosting The Porter Wagoner Show, a popular television variety program. Their professional relationship began when Porter asked her to write songs for his show's female singer. Dolly had already made a name for herself in Nashville as a talented songwriter, selling her songs to other artists while trying to break through as a performer. When the show's female lead, Norma Jean, decided to leave to get married, Porter immediately thought of Dolly. He'd been impressed by her songwriting and her growing presence on the local music scene. He invited her to his office, asked her to bring her guitar, and offered her the spot as his new girl singer for Dolly. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. Being featured on a nationally syndicated show meant millions of viewers would finally hear her voice. But her debut didn't go smoothly. The audience had adored Norma Jean, the show's previous female singer, and Dolly's high-pitched voice and bubbly personality were a sharp contrast. But Dolly being Dolly, she slowly turned those skeptics into fans. Viewers grew to love her duets with Porter, and soon they began to appreciate her as a solo performer too. What began as a rocky start quickly turned into a turning point. The show became the platform that catapulted her into stardom. Yet, that same success would also become the source of one of the most painful chapters in her career. As Dolly's popularity soared, tensions began to rise behind the scenes. Porter, who had once championed her, grew increasingly frustrated as she became the star of the show. When she eventually decided it was time to move on and build her own solo career, he tried to stop her. When that failed, he took her to court, suing her for millions and igniting a feud that would linger for decades. Their relationship became complicated. By the early 1970s, they were clashing often. Creative disagreements, bruised egos, and conflicting ambitions made working together nearly impossible. After Dolly's departure, Porter lashed out publicly, criticizing her in interviews. He even mocked her for posing for Playboy, claiming it wasn't something a real country singer would do. But Dolly never fired back. She stayed true to herself, always insisting she was simply being authentic, glamorous, bold, and unapologetically Dolly. Porter accused her of betrayal, even suggesting she wasn't trustworthy and would turn on those closest to her. But Dolly's long, loving marriage to Carl Dean told a very different story. The two had been together since before she ever met Porter, and remained inseparable despite his fame-shunning ways. Dolly was loyal through and through. She just refused to let anyone, not even Porter Wagoner, control her career. Porter claimed he fired her. Dolly said she quit. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. By 1974, after 7 years on the show, Dolly had simply outgrown her role. She wanted to explore her own sound and identity outside of Porter's shadow. Still, she stayed longer than she'd planned, partly out of loyalty, partly because she genuinely valued the platform the show had given her. But when it was time to go, she knew it. After leaving, Dolly continued to work with Porter professionally for a few years. He even produced some of her biggest hits. But as Dolly's solo career exploded and Porter's fame started to fade, jealousy took hold. Eventually, he sued her for nearly $3 million, claiming everything from broken contracts to repayment for lavish gifts he'd given her during their partnership. Those extravagant gifts, jewelry, clothes, even expensive personal items, sparked endless rumors that their relationship had been more than professional. Dolly, however, always denied any affair. She was already married to Carl at the time and insisted her connection with Porter was rooted in respect and gratitude, not romance. Still, the gossip never fully went away. In that era, many assumed that if a man hired a young female singer, there must have been something going on. But in Dolly's case, the relationship was far more complex than simple gossip could explain. Despite the lawsuits and the bitterness, Dolly never forgot what Porter did for her career. He was the first to believe in her when others doubted her. He gave her the stage, the exposure, and the chance to become who she was meant to be. So, when their legal battle ended, Dolly agreed to settle by paying him $1 million, a massive sum at the time. Many thought he didn't deserve a dime, but Dolly did it out of respect and a desire to move forward. When Dolly finally shared one of her biggest secrets, when Dolly Parton and Carl Dean reached their 50th wedding anniversary, they decided to finally have the dream wedding they never got back in 1966. This time, things were different. Dolly had the fame, the fortune, and the chance to create the fairy tale moment she'd always wanted. The ceremony was lavish, filled with love, and for the first time, fans got to see the man who had captured Dolly's heart decades ago. Getting Carl to step into the spotlight wasn't easy. Dolly managed to convince her famously private husband by promising that all the proceeds from their wedding photos would go to charity. Carl agreed, posed for professional pictures, and even released a rare written message to the public. In that message, he revealed that it had been love at first sight. The day he met Dolly, he knew he was going to marry her, and he wasted no time making it happen. Before that public appearance in 2016, though, rumors had swirled for years. Some fans believed Carl Dean was nothing more than a story Dolly invented to protect her privacy. Since he was rarely seen in public and almost never photographed with her, it wasn't hard for people to believe he might be a figment of her imagination. But when Carl himself spoke to Taste of Country, confirming their decades-long marriage and recalling how he fell for her instantly, the myth was finally put to rest. The couple's unusual arrangement, her life in the spotlight, his life far from it, wasn't a problem for them. In fact, it was the key to their happiness. Carl preferred a quiet private life, while Dolly thrived under the bright lights. From the very beginning, they agreed to respect each other's boundaries. Dolly has often said it was advice from her mother that taught her to always keep a small piece of her life private. And that lesson helped shape her marriage. Despite living in two very different worlds, Dolly and Carl built a love based on trust, freedom, and respect. Carl never felt jealous of her fame, and Dolly never tried to change his need for peace and privacy. Over time, keeping him out of the public eye simply became natural for her. She often said her faith helped her accept that their love didn't need to be on display, because even if the world couldn't see it, God could. Since finally appearing in public in 2016, Carl has occasionally been spotted in Dolly's social media posts. She sometimes shares small glimpses of him, especially on special days like Valentine's Day. But their relationship remains mostly private. During their anniversary year, Dolly spoke fondly in interviews about how she and Carl balanced each other out. According to her, they might not have much in common, but that's part of the magic. Their differences have kept things fresh, fun, and full of surprises. Carl might not share her love of country music. He's more into rock bands like Led Zeppelin and bluegrass. But he's always been proud of her success. Dolly once joked that he's only seen her perform live a couple of times, but that's never bothered her. Their secret to a lasting marriage is simple: give each other space to be themselves. Carl enjoys the quiet life, Dolly loves the stage, and neither one feels the need to change the other. Now, even though there's never been any real scandal about Carl Dean being unfaithful, Dolly Parton has admitted that her husband has a harmless crush on actress Jennifer Aniston. She often jokes about it, finding the whole thing amusing rather than threatening. And despite all of Dolly's fame and connections, Carl has never tried to act on that admiration. If anything, it's a sweet reminder of how loyal he truly is. Ironically, Dolly even sang on the soundtrack for Dumplin', a Netflix film starring Jennifer Aniston, but there's no record of the two ever meeting. While Dolly and Carl may seem like complete opposites on the surface, their bond is built on laughter and an offbeat sense of humor. They've both said that laughter is their secret weapon. Whenever they argue, it doesn't take long before one of them cracks a joke, and suddenly everything feels light again. It's a rhythm that might not work for everyone, but it's kept their relationship joyful and full of fun. For all of Dolly's glitz and global fame, she's always been a homebody at heart. After long tours and endless performances, she looks forward to coming home to Carl, sharing quiet evenings together, eating home-cooked meals, or heading to their favorite little restaurants where no one makes a fuss. One of their favorite shared pastimes is camping. Dolly once bought Carl a luxury RV with her music earnings, and he loved it. Not because of the luxury, but because it meant more adventures together, just the two of them. Though the couple never had children of their own, Dolly found maternal joy as the godmother of singer Miley Cyrus. Over the years, she and Carl have chosen a life that values simplicity, privacy, and time together over fame or attention. When Dolly isn't on stage, she's often on the road with Carl, driving cross-country in their RV or relaxing somewhere quiet, away from the cameras. Both Dolly and Carl avoid big social gatherings whenever they can. Dolly may be the life of the party at her professional events, but in her personal life, she prefers peace, familiarity, and genuine moments over the noise of celebrity functions. What's kept their marriage strong isn't constant closeness, it's independence. Dolly has always been open about the fact that she and Carl spend a lot of time apart, and that distance has helped keep their love alive. For them, absence really does make the heart grow fonder. Being able to live their own lives, pursue their own passions, and still come back to each other has kept their connection fresh and strong. By keeping their relationship private and giving each other space, Dolly and Carl managed to build something rare in show business, a marriage grounded in love, respect, and a good sense of humor. But in 2019, heartbreaking news changed everything. Carl Dean, Dolly Parton's husband of over 50 years, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. It was a devastating blow. Over the next 2 years, his health declined quickly, and Dolly's focus quietly shifted from the spotlight of the stage to the gentle, day-to-day care of her ailing husband. By early 2021, Dolly had become Carl's full-time caregiver, rarely leaving his side. The woman who once spent months on tour now spent her days at home in Nashville, holding his hand, singing softly to him, and cherishing what time they had left. His condition brought a series of painful complications: gallbladder issues, a fading appetite, and bouts of confusion that sometimes led to frustration. Once fiercely independent, Carl eventually became almost entirely housebound, his body and mind weakened by illness. Even before his diagnosis, he had battled high blood pressure and heart problems, but Alzheimer's had made everything worse. Pandemic struck, Dolly's protective instincts grew even stronger. Fearing that Carl's fragile health wouldn't survive an infection, she drastically reduced the number of people in their household staff and even limited visits from family. Those who knew the couple said she was determined to keep him safe, no matter the cost. It was an incredibly painful time, filled with isolation, love, and the quiet heartbreak of watching the man she'd adored for decades slip away. In March 2025, after years of illness, Carl Dean passed away peacefully at their home in Nashville. He was 82 years old, Dolly shared the news through a heartfelt message on social media, asking for privacy as she and their family mourned. In her statement, she reflected on their 6 decades together, expressing deep gratitude for the love they had shared and the prayers sent her way. Carl was laid to rest in a private ceremony attended only by close family, just as he would have wanted. A few days later, Dolly reached out to her fans again with a message of appreciation. She thanked everyone for their kindness, saying their love and support had brought her great comfort during her grief. Though she admitted the loss was deeply painful, she found peace in knowing Carl was no longer suffering. She said she felt his presence with her every day and believed he was now in God's arms. In the months that followed, Dolly began to open up about her loss. In an interview with The Independent, she shared that while part of her was at peace, knowing Carl was free from pain, the loneliness still lingered. Yet she resolved to keep his memory alive by channeling her grief into her work, carrying him with her in everything she did. She often reflected on how proud Carl had always been of her career. He used to tell her that she was born to be a star, admiring her passion for performing even if he preferred a quieter life. Now, those words served as her motivation to keep shining for both of them. In June 2025, just a few months after his passing, Dolly marked what would have been their 59th wedding anniversary in a deeply personal way. She returned to the small Tennessee church where they were married in 1966, standing on the same steps where their love story had begun. It was her first anniversary without him, and though she stood alone, she said she felt his spirit beside her. Dolly Parton has often said that faith gives her strength, and she holds firmly to the belief that she and Carl will be reunited one day. Until then, she continues to honor his memory with music, with love, and with the same quiet devotion that defined their life together for nearly 60 years. After 30 years, Dolly Parton breaks silence on her double life. In late September 2025, fans around the world were caught off guard when country music legend Dolly Parton shared some unexpected news. Just weeks shy of her 80th birthday, Dolly took to Instagram to open up about her health, explaining that she'd been dealing with a few medical challenges and would need to undergo some procedures. Along with that, she announced the postponement of her highly anticipated Las Vegas residency, saying she wanted to be at her best for her fans. A move that earned her even more admiration from supporters who've loved her honesty for decades. This wasn't an isolated issue, though. Dolly's health struggles had been bubbling beneath the surface for some time. Earlier that same month, she'd missed an appearance at her beloved Dollywood theme park in Tennessee. Instead, she sent a heartfelt video message explaining that doctors had advised her not to travel due to a kidney stone. It was one of those moments where fans were reminded that even legends have their limits. Unfortunately, her health issues also forced her to skip some major milestones. She had been set to receive the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, a recognition of her lifelong charitable work, but had to bow out of the ceremony due to her condition. And as if that weren't enough heartache, Dolly had endured an incredibly tough year personally, losing her husband of 60 years, Carl Dean, back in March. In early October, concern for Dolly's well-being grew after her sister Frida posted a message online asking fans to pray for her. The post quickly spread across social media, sparking fears that Dolly's condition had worsened. However, just hours later, Frida clarified the situation, explaining that she hadn't meant to alarm anyone. Dolly was simply feeling under the weather, and as a woman of faith, Frida believed in the power of prayer. Their other sister, Stella, later chimed in to echo that reassurance, noting that Dolly was receiving treatment for kidney stones, but was otherwise doing fine. Then, on October 8th, Dolly herself appeared on Instagram to set the record straight. Dressed in a sparkling country western outfit while filming commercials for the Grand Ole Opry, she looked every bit her vibrant self. She told fans not to believe the rumors, jokingly asking, "Do I look sick to you?" and thanking everyone for their prayers and concern. She explained that after caring for her late husband and neglecting her own health, doctors had insisted she finally address a few lingering issues. Nothing major, she said, just routine treatments and checkups near Vanderbilt Medical Center. Most importantly, she assured everyone she wasn't dying and that she wasn't planning to slow down anytime soon. In true Dolly fashion, she even found humor in the wild online rumors, referencing some viral AI-generated photos that falsely depicted her on her deathbed alongside Reba McEntire. Laughing it off, she quipped that if she were truly on her deathbed, Reba probably wouldn't be sitting right there beside her. But beneath the jokes, Dolly wanted her fans to hear one thing loud and clear: she was okay. She wrapped up her message by saying she wasn't ready to go anywhere just yet, insisting that God still had work for her to do, and she intended to keep doing it. For longtime fans, this moment felt familiar. Dolly has always been open about her cosmetic procedures, but she once kept some of her most serious health battles private. Back in her 30s, she faced a devastating diagnosis that changed her life. While struggling to conceive, she began experiencing severe abdominal pain and other symptoms that turned out to be endometriosis. In 1982, things took a frightening turn when she collapsed on stage and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors discovered internal bleeding, and she eventually underwent a partial hysterectomy, a procedure that ended her dreams of having children. She was just 36. The aftermath was emotionally brutal. She described that period as one of the darkest in her life, marked by depression and feelings of loss. But as she's done time and time again, Dolly pulled herself out of the darkness with faith, humor, and sheer determination. It's the same resilient spirit she still carries today, one that refuses to let pain, age, or rumors dim her light. Even as she faces new health challenges, Dolly Parton remains the same unstoppable force she's always been: brave, witty, and grounded in gratitude. She's living proof that even when life throws its toughest curveballs, a little faith, laughter, and rhinestone sparkle can carry you through.